Hey everyone, it's Alexander Robinson. Welcome to the channel, and this is my review for Elemental, the latest film from Pixar, and their second one to be released theatrically after the pandemic. The movie's directed by Peter Sohn, who's been with Pixar for many years. His first feature film with them was The Good Dinosaur, which I wasn't too much of a fan of, but he also did voice work for a lot of characters like Emile from Ratatouille, Squishy from Monsters University, and just last year, Socks from Lightyear. He also voiced Genki in Across the Spider-Verse, which came out a few weeks ago. But this is his second film with Pixar, and it follows a family of fire people, as in they are literally people that are made of fire, as they immigrate to Element City to try to start a new life. They're the only fire people in the city at the time of their arrival, but as the years go on, more fire people move to Element City and have their own little community. And our main character is Ember, a young woman who's trying to prove herself that she's ready to take over her father's shop so he can retire, but she has some issues controlling her temper. And this gets to a point where she causes a leak in her father's shop, which brings in a safety inspector, Wade, who's a water person. And as the two of them are trying to do whatever they can to keep the shop from closing, they start to form a bond with each other and wonder, can water and fire actually mix and become compatible? So far in this decade, Pixar has not had the best track record. Now, I don't subscribe to the theory that they've completely gone downhill. No Pixar movie is ever awful. While Cars 2 is hands down their worst movie, it's awful by Pixar standards. As a regular animated movie, it's average, so it's at the very least watchable and enjoyable in certain aspects, but you expect a lot more from Pixar. And over the years, I basically learned to accept the fact that Pixar is now just like any other studio out there. While they were something special when I was growing up, nowadays it's like they'll put something good out, but they'll also put something out that's not as good, but not quite bad. Which brings us to Elemental. This movie actually had its premiere at the Cannes Film Festival, where it did not get the best reviews when it first premiered there. Like, they were mixed at best, and I was a little skeptical on it because the trailers didn't entirely sell me on this movie either. But now that I've had the chance to see the movie for myself, I guess the snobbiest people were at Cannes when this came out, because this is really good. I would almost say great, but I'll explain why I don't think it's amazing or brilliant like some of Pixar's best films. It's so refreshing to see an original Pixar movie again, and while the story itself is basically a romantic comedy, it's told in a way and takes place in a world that feels new. It's not all that familiar in terms of the way the movie looks. I found myself charmed by these characters, and I bought into the romance between the two main characters, Ember and Wade. Most of the movie's focus is actually on Ember, voiced by Leah Lewis, and it's mostly a story about her trying to figure out what she wants to do with her life, because she grew up with this idea that she's going to take over her dad's shop because her parents are essentially immigrants and they want to try to keep as much tradition with them as possible. But she's also the firstborn of her family in Elemental City, so she's trying to figure out, does she actually want this in her life, or does she want to expand her horizons and be her own person? Leah Lewis's voice work is really good, and the design for Ember herself, I'm just gonna flat out say it, it's pretty hot. Yes, that was a pun, but I also quite mean that in the other sense. And then you also have Wade, voiced by Mamoudou Athie. I hope I pronounced that name correctly, but this character comes in near the end of the first act, and it's kind of an abrupt introduction. He just pops up, no real establishment on who this character is, and I found him to be pretty obnoxious at first. He's always worried, he's crying consistently, he just doesn't feel like he has any confidence in himself. And I immediately thought, oh, this movie might not actually work that well if this character is going to be acting the same way. But once Wade and Ember start to actually get to know each other more, go out, and form a closer bond, then I actually felt something for these two characters. And there's a sequence where we're introduced to Wade's family, and I found all those characters to be pretty charming. Another really great aspect about this movie is the score done by Thomas Newman, and I believe this is the 4th movie he's scored with Pixar, the first being Finding Nemo. He did Finding Dory. He also scored WALL-E, which was Pixar's other romance film, and it makes perfect sense that he would score another Pixar rom-com because his score fits perfectly with the look of Element City, the scenes. It's fantastic all around, and I hope he gets another Oscar nomination for this music because it's that good. The only other issue I have with the movie is that it didn't really hit me emotionally like many of Pixar's other fantastic movies. When I think of great Pixar movies that really hit me in the gut emotionally, I think of movies like The Incredibles, Toy Story 3, WALL-E, Up, Soul. Even Toy Story 4 gets me at the end of the film, and this movie doesn't really do that. There was a point where it almost got me, but not quite to the same level where I was a mess. But at the end of the day, it's still really good. It's probably in the mid-tier Pixar movies, which, considering their filmography, is not much of a criticism at all because it's visually stunning, the characters are charming, even if their designs are a little weird, I found myself getting used to it after a while. The relationship between Ember and her father is actually very well done, and there's a small character moment with her father that gets a big payoff at the end of the film. So I found this to be really charming, and I'd say worth seeing in your lifetime. The only reason I'm not saying get off your ass and go see it right now is because it didn't hit me emotionally like so many of the other Pixar greats. But nevertheless, it's still a fantastic movie and one that deserves to be seen in theaters. It really breaks my heart that this movie is not doing well at the box office, and it's all because Disney had to release 3 of their movies in a row on streaming. So naturally, audiences are just trained to accept that Pixar will be on Disney+, and that's bothersome because Pixar is really one of the best animation studios out there. Yes, while Pixar may not be releasing masterpiece after masterpiece like they did before, and while DreamWorks is certainly starting to give them competition, Pixar still has made really good movies, and they continue to do so. This is one that I hope people get to see in theaters, and if you somehow miss this in theaters, which is a crime, you have to see it the instant it hits Disney+, because I think this is gonna stick around for my top 10 list. And something that Pixar hasn't done in a while that I appreciate with this movie is that they attached a short film in front of it. The short film that played in front of Elemental is Carl's date, and it basically focuses on Carl as he's nervous about going on a date for the first time after his wife died. And Doug the dog is essentially helping him out in the best ways he can possibly help his master out. It's really cute. Doug is just as funny as ever. The voice work is still fantastic from both Bob Peterson and Ed Asner. It's a very fitting continuation for Up because in that movie, Carl basically goes on this adventure to try to fulfill a wish that his wife had before she passed, only realizing that the time he spent with her was an adventure in itself. In this short, he basically is scared about, if I go out on this date, will I betray Ellie? And it's one of those things where it's like, I'm sure at the end of the day, she wants you to be happy. It's not necessarily about moving on. It's trying to make yourself happy, but never forget the people you love that are no longer with you. It's a very sweet short film, and a fitting goodbye for Ed Asner, who we lost 2 years ago. So if I were to rate this short individually, I'd also say worth seeing in your lifetime. It didn't hit me on the same emotional levels as Up did, but it's still very heartfelt and very cute. And there you go, that's my review for both Elemental and the short film Carl's Date. I hope you enjoyed it, and now I want to know what you guys think about the movie. If you've seen it, what did you think? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.